Welcome back to Spitballin Cards. In today's episode, we're talking about Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and what's going to happen to their cards after the Juan Soto trade and the Shohei Ohtani signing. I want to introduce our cast this week. It's a rather small cast. We actually have Jeff, who's famous, and he's going to be in a TV show. We'll talk about that if he wants us to at a different time. And then Phil is actually sick. So we have me, Scott from Scotty B Cards. We have Chris from Blabbin' About Slabbin', and Ty, aka Teapot, who is on the Market Movers channel on Sports Card Investor. So let's jump into the very first topic. I want to talk about Juan Soto. For those that aren't privy to what's happening, is Juan Soto was actually traded from the Padres to the Yankees. And I think this helps the Yankees a ton. I think there's a great chance Soto has a fantastic year because the ballpark factors in Yankee Stadium are much more hitter-friendly than Petco Park in San Diego. And so I want to hear your thoughts on Juan Soto. Obviously, it's a one-year rental. Technically, he is a Boras client, and I am not high on him signing an extension before he's a free agent because he's shooting for a $400 to $500 million contract. I'm not sure the Yankees would give that to him. But I want to hear your thoughts if this is going to be good for his cards, bad for his cards, no effect on his cards because of the one-year rental, or you think he needs to perform. I want to hear all that. Chris, let's start with you.
Okay. Yeah, I can't. It's hard to believe it might only be a one-year rental, right? But yeah, if he doesn't sign an extension, Steve Cohen. I picture that meme of the guy behind the tree, like rubbing his hands, like just waiting for the opportunity, to outbid the Yankees for him. But yeah, I can't see this as anything but a win for Soto and for his cards. We've been watching online. The volume of sales of Soto stuff has definitely gone up, but not necessarily the prices that those cards are selling for, that seems kind of interesting. But if he hits right in front of Aaron Judge, like he's going to put up, or he should, I shouldn't say is, but he should put up some monster numbers in that ballpark with that tiny right field. He should be able to eclipse his the personal home run best, which he did this year. So I just can't see it. I can't see it hurting him in any way. And I feel like those fans are just going to love him. I know he gets off to some slow starts, but usually Judge gets off to a hot start. So I feel like, he should have a little bit of cover in the month of April. And then, I don't know. I feel like if there's a rare Soto card that you really like, now is the time where it may come up for sale after this trade. So Is now the time to buy it, or should we wait? I don't know.
So they haven't gone up a ton yet. Sorry, Ty. They haven't gone up a ton yet, so that's interesting. But maybe they were already overvalued to begin with, and this was already baked into it. But let's hear your thoughts, Ty.
Well, several of his cards have gone up. I think overall in Market Movers, he's up 10% over the last 7 days. Some of his cards up more than that. We saw I think it was his BGS 9.5 Bowman Chrome Auto sell for, what was it, like 700 more than the last sale right when the trade was announced. So there's some cards moving, some reactivity. I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't buy Soto a few months ago when we were talking about him on the show and talking about, him going to the Yankees. We all said this felt like a foregone conclusion. And I think overall, I would expect things to cool down. Like right now is the peak hype, right? We're going to get into, Christmas and New Year's and everything. And then I think there'll be at least a little period where people just aren't thinking about him, aren't focusing on him as much. Obviously, like you guys said, he is traditionally a slow starter to the season. It'll be really interesting to see if he can change that, hitting in that lineup with New York. But I don't know what's going to happen to his power numbers with that more favorable park. That's what I'm most curious to see. And if he can bump his home run total by 10, suddenly even the people who are the biggest Juan Soto haters out there may, kind of change their tune on that if all other things remain consistent. So I do think that Soto's cards could continue to go up. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with his contract, but I think that you can make a case for selling right now. I wouldn't sell a month from now. I'd be holding leading up to the season because I would expect that there's probably going to be some more hype for him before the season starts.
Yeah, I agree. I think what's going to happen is they're going to be a little bump now. They're going to either stay flat or drop. But in spring training, people see him in a Yankees uniform before the season. That's when you're going to see some card sales, I think. People are going to get excited. He had a great spring training last year. I remember he hit like 350. But his slow starts could get him booed in April. There's a chance of that. But it's funny because people always think Juan Soto had a bad year, but then you look back and it was like a 160 OPS plus with like 35 home runs and 109 RBI. It's like, holy cow. And so he'll be fine. I think he'll do great in New York. I think he can handle the pressure. He showed that in Washington when he actually did well in the World Series, did great in the World Series, actually. But I am concerned in some ways, this might be surprising about Yankee Stadium, because Juan Soto's at his best when he's going to center in the opposite way, in my opinion, especially for his home run power. And left field, he should be fine, but center field's pretty deep in New York. And so if he gets pull happy with right field, that might actually hurt him in some ways, because a lot of his pulled home runs are deep, like they're bombed, but that produces him to hit a lot of ground balls to the left side, the right side. And so that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because that could be detrimental, but I think he'll be just fine. I think he's going to have more pitches to hit with Aaron Judge directly behind him, and he'll maintain that 400 OBP, and he's going to score like 130, 140 runs or something nuts if he can stay healthy. So it'll be great. I'm looking forward to it. Overall, though, I do have a Juan Soto card. I'm going to show my screen really quick. And for those that are on Spotify listening, it's a red ink autograph of Juan Soto. It's right here. It's a jersey number. 22 out of 69, 10 autograph. And I was going to sell this card because I don't know if his jersey number is going to be the same on the Yankees. And that kind of takes away from that card a little bit. But at the same time, I just feel like this card's worth more than people are willing to pay right now. I've had people who are interested and almost pull the trigger, but then they say, right now is probably a bad time to buy Juan Soto. So people are conscious of this, like buying into hype. But at the same time, this card's still worth less than it was 2 years ago when he was on the Padres. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But any other thoughts, Chris?
Do we also think it's a foregone conclusion that he's going to hit in front of Aaron Judge? Judge hit in the 2-hole for the Yankees a lot. Is it possible that he stays in the 2-hole and Soto hits behind him?
Here's a chance.
I haven't heard it.
My guess is it going to be because of righty-lefty matchups. They keep him in front of Aaron Judge. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe they keep him behind because they might have better right-handed bats. Stanton's not great anymore, so could go Judge, Soto, Stanton. But then Soto has no protection with Stanton. I don't know. All the mock lineups have him high.
So. He seems like the quintessential 2-hitter when you have a guy like Judge. Like he gets on base, right? You want him on base more than anything, and then let Judge mash. So I don't think they would bat him behind Judge.
Yeah, I was just curious. I haven't heard if Aaron Boone or anyone has said anything about it. I think Judge was like predominantly their 2-hitter last season. So I'm just curious. It does make sense to put Soto right in front of Judge, but honestly, I feel like you could bat him. You can any order, and it's going to be productive as long as they're both on the field.
I'm looking up a stat that you'll like, Chris, but you have to give me a second.
Yeah.
But I bet Juan Soto in the last 50 years, he has a 421 on base percentage. I'm guessing that's going to be like top 10 in the last 50 years. So to put him behind Judge, especially because others walk him, he has a great eye. He has to be in front, is my guess. Because Aaron Judge, his on base is great, but he's at 396. So we'll see. So
yeah, no, I'm just curious, because someone's got to protect the other one. Certainly it's not going to be Mike Stanton or Giancarlo Stanton, unfortunately.
Nice little throwback there with Mike Stanton. I liked it.
I know. So, occasionally I'll just say it wrong and try to catch myself.
You've been in the hobby a while when you remember Mike Stanton as the top prospect back in the day. Ooh. So, Ty, what was that?
I've got a stat while you're doing this. So I was looking at Baseball Savant. Maybe this is what you were referring to, Scott, already, but looking at expected home runs by park. So Soto had 35 home runs last year, and then it shows all the different teams and how many home runs would have been hit in each of those respective parks. And the Yankees are actually the lowest number of any team at 27 across all of baseball. They were at 20. It would have been only a home run 27 times of his 35 home runs. Kansas City and Cleveland are tied with 27, but that's kind of interesting to see that.
So left center field is deep in Yankee Stadium.
Yeah.
So I'm interested how that plays out because I think there's a chance he doesn't quite have the power numbers you'd expect. The park, what does it say for Citi Field? That's a park that I feel like he would do great in, is the Mets Stadium, like the best park for him.
Let's see, Mets 34.
Okay.
I will say if he doesn't stay with the Yankees, let's say he plays 1 year with the Yankees, then the Mets sign him. That would be 4 teams in 4 years. At that point, do we think that hurts? Does that hurt his collectability? A 4th team?
Kind of. I think so, especially if he doesn't stay there. Especially if he just somehow if he ends up playing for like 7 teams in his career.
He's got an opt-out after the 3rd year and just jump ship or something.
Yeah.
I will say, if you look at Bryce Harper, he's one of the few players where a team change has not impacted his cards, but helped his cards. I would argue Freddie Freeman probably hurt. Mookie Betts probably hurt. You can look at Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado probably both hurt by it. There's not just a base that loves him. But Bryce Harper going to the Phillies, he has just embraced Philadelphia. And that's helped his card values a ton. It's rebranded him. So maybe Soto could do the same thing with the Mets if that's where he goes. I think the Yankees will do their best to sign him, though. I think they will give him $450 million, personally.
Yeah, especially if they lose out on Yamamoto.
Yes.
He would have had 34 at Citi Field. You asked that question.
Okay.
I say that.
So what was his highest stadium time?
Oh, the highest. That's right. The highest you asked me. I was like, there was a question. 38 with the Reds.
Makes sense. That makes total sense, actually, in Great America. That makes total sense.
38 with the Reds. Not really. I guess 36 in Milwaukee.
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, 37.
But Citi Field is better than Yankee Stadium for Soto. But Soto's had great stats, so I'm sure he'll be fine. But I think we're talked about Soto enough. Let me ask you one final question about him in regards to buying his cards. Are you buying Juan Soto right now or no? And why?
I would say personally, it is Monday, December 11th. On Friday, December 8th, I purchased a Juan Soto card.
What'd you buy?
I'm sorry?
What'd you buy?
I bought his Soto Shuffle, the Stadium Club Chrome out of 2020 with an autograph on it. Because I've been looking for one, and the same one copy has been sitting on eBay for like a year at some ungodly price. And finally, like a base auto popped up. So I feel like it would have stayed. I talked to the seller, and he said he had no plans to sell it, but with the trade, he figured it was worth putting it out there to see what kind of offers he got. So that's sort of the catch-22 you're in. When something like this happens and a player gets hyped, you're going to see rarer stuff you normally don't see or wouldn't have a chance to buy, but the prices are probably going to be less appealing than you would hope.
That's definitely been the case. I have seen a ton of Soto stuff hit I have, a number of like generic save searches on eBay that aren't player specific, but they're like maybe variation specific or something like that. And my save search has been flooded with Sotos and rare ones, superfractors and other things that I think people are going, oh, now's the time. So
it's tough. You want that rare stuff. It's not going to show up when he's gone 2 for his last 45. And his team's out of the playoffs. Like that card's not going to go up for sale.
I've listed my red ink autograph jersey number for 5,000 or best offer if you're interested listening to this. But yeah, I only listed it because I want to see if anyone is now who's a Yankees fan wants Soto. So we'll see. He has quite a few watchers, but I'll probably just pull that down soon anyways, because I might as well hold until next year and see what happens. Right. So I think there are buying opportunities in Soto. I do. I think that there's a chance he goes up in the spring, just like everybody else usually does when they get hyped up. And I think Yankees fans are going to be excited. And if he can have a decent start of the year, like he did in 2020 when he was MVP runner-up to Freddie Freeman. No, maybe it was third or fourth. He might have been fifth that year. He should have been higher, but top 5 MVP. He led the league in OPS and slugging and a bunch of other stats. I think he has a hot start. His cards are going to be insane, just absolutely insane. So I think there's a risk that might be worth it. So Shohei Ohtani has now signed with the Los Angeles Dodgers for a 10-year deal, $700 million. We thought he was going to sign with the Toronto Blue Jays. I'm sorry, Blue Jays fans. That was a tough day on Twitter. It was absolutely brutal. But we all knew he was going to the Dodgers. I feel like it was a foregone conclusion, just like Soto to the Yankees. We knew Ohtani was going to the Dodgers. It just felt like right, or it felt like that's what both sides wanted. And it came out today as well that Ohtani is only going to have a salary of $2 million every year, and $68 million a year will be deferred. So he'll make $20 million the next 10 years, and he'll make $680 million, I think, like the 8 to 10 years after that. One thing that's interesting as well with Shohei Ohtani is he can actually miss all of his payments because he makes about $50 million in brand deals every year. I believe the next closest is like Aaron Judge at $5 million. And so he makes an ungodly amount of money as well just through brand deals. So I don't think he's too worried about money. He wants to win. Just so you're aware, it actually still has a competitive balance tax hit of about $46 million instead of $70 million because they do it on a 5% interest from now until that date. Or something along those lines. I'm not an expert. I'm not going to pretend to be, but that's what I read on Twitter. So it's going to be about $42 to $46 million, but that allows the Dodgers even more financial flexibility to build around him, which is what he wants. He's not as worried about the money. And so I want to talk about Shohei Ohtani and his cards and his career. What do we think is going to happen with Shohei Ohtani in Los Angeles? Ty, what are your thoughts?
We all saw this coming. This is the Dodgers was the team I've been, saying all along. Then also the Toronto stuff happened. That was an absolute disaster. I was shocked. I was as convinced as everybody else just because of everything that was happening. And then they sort of pulled the rug out on him. But first of all, just mind-boggling money, absolutely mind-boggling. And to think that, I don't know if this was true. Maybe you guys have a little more information on this, but before the injury, there were people floating numbers out there closer to 900 before the injury. Whether or not that was ever a reality or anything he could have obtained, I don't know. But just breaking down the math, everybody's seen all the little infographics all over social media showing how much money he's making, like $2.22 per second over the life of this contract. It's based on 10 years, not based on however long this is going to drag into the future. But I started crunching the numbers and looking at other things like, that's $140,000 per at bat. Every time he walks up to the plate, he's making $140,000 based on 500 at bats a season. So, obviously that's not factoring in walks and whatever, but it's just unbelievable money, like 1.6 million a home run. The Dodgers to me were the team that made the most sense all along. He's staying close. It's a team that has contended. I know they've only won one World Series in a shortened season, but they are a contender, perennial contender. They're willing to spend. They're going to put that roster in the best position that it can be in. Dave Roberts seems like a pretty solid GM. Overall, I think the situation makes a lot of sense. I'm not particularly excited about having to face him, having the Braves having to face him in the playoffs potentially every year, although I might take that still over facing Philadelphia at this point. I think it's a win. I think it's a win for the hobby. I think it's a much better situation for his cards than if he had gone to Toronto or the Mets or somewhere else that wouldn't have made sense. And as far as what's going to happen with his card prices now, I think there's a bump already happening, some excitement around it. And now he just has to live up to the expectations, which is for any player is a big, big, big what if, and no more than for him. I think a lot of us who are just baseball fans are going to be rooting for him.
Yeah, I know a lot of Angels fans are hurt right now. And I don't want to say rightfully so. They had Ohtani, like it's great, but they should be happy for him. I know that sounds ridiculous, but at the same time, it's tough when he goes to like the crosstown rivals who they just hate.
Yeah,
and
I don't think they should be mad at Ohtani. I think they should be mad at their ownership.
Arte Moreno. Yeah,
absolutely.
They should be mad. They should be channeling that anger in the correct direction and not burning Ohtani jerseys in trash cans, but, picketing outside the stadium or something. I'm not going to say anybody should commit arson, but they should be channeling that energy in the right direction. It's not Ohtani.
Yeah. Chris, what are your thoughts?
I'm glad we're not advocating criminal activity. I think that's a good bar we should try to stay over. I will say that if there's a benefit for Atlanta, Ty, it's the fact that the Dodgers should have the best record in the National League with this lineup. So they're going to have to deal with the Phillies before the Braves will in the playoffs. So I like that. We'll only have to beat one of them, ideally. But I feel like it feels like a perfect storm for Ohtani's collectability. He's going to the biggest market. He's going to be with Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman, two of the most likable, well-known Major League Baseball players. The front three of their lineup is just going to be ridiculous. He's going to put up absurd numbers. And if Topps is listening, please give us a Series 1, maybe an Ultra SP of him holding up his Dodgers jersey at the press conference, something really, really rare. Buried, not just a golden mirror, which hopefully they're not going to do again, but give us something really rare and something special. But yeah, much like Soto, I did see a lot of really rare Ohtani stuff pop up over the last couple of days. A bunch of the Series 2 hand-on-helmet SSPs. I saw a few of those pop up, and usually there's just same thing. There's two sitting on eBay for $10,000 that no one's ever going to buy. But yeah, I would imagine just seeing him win baseball games is going to make people more interested in his cards. And it stinks for Angels fans, but the last 6 years have stunk for Angel fans. And the next 5 years are going to stink for Angel fans. So there's really not much we can do about that.
Mike Trout and Ohtani did not make the playoffs once together. It just shows how hard baseball is. And that's the thing, is it's such a team sport compared to other sports like basketball. If you'd have had, I don't know, the two best, NBA players at their peak, let's say you had LeBron, and we saw D Wade and Chris Bosh, they're pretty dang good. Right. And so you can see a huge difference in basketball versus baseball. And so it's kind of hard to imagine in 10, 20 years, we're talking about Trout and Ohtani are on the same team in their prime. They won 3 MVPs in 6 years, and they never once had a winning record. Not even make the playoffs. They never had a winning record one time. So even in the shortened 2020 season. But
it's a meaningful September game.
It's hard. It's so hard. And obviously, I think we all want to see that. Obviously, he did a great job in the World Baseball Classic. I have no doubt he'll be clutch under pressure, all of that. But how many World Series do you think they win? Do you think they win multiple? 1, 0? What's your guess in the next 10 years?
More than one.
You think?
Right. If you had to bet, you would bet more than one, right? Because they're not done. I'm guessing Yamamoto is going to sign there, like in the next few days. Like, I mean, they have bottomless pits of money, and this didn't even really hit their luxury tax, so they're definitely not done.
I think Yamamoto's definitely in play as well, because I think he mentioned, this might have been a Twitter rumor, but I'm pretty sure he mentioned that he wants to play with other Japanese players. And who doesn't want to play with Ohtani? And that might be another big thing. Yeah, is that Ohtani? But that's another big thing for LA, is he's going to attract a bunch of Ohtani's teammates. They want to play with the best baseball player in Japanese history. You could argue Ichiro as well. Actually, American baseball, Japanese history. There's other players I don't know in the history of Japanese baseball. I know that like the all-time home run record is in Japan with like 800. But so I'm not saying that they weren't great. But I mean, in American baseball, so people are going to come over to play with Ohtani. It's a great thing for the Dodgers. They're going to pay this off without even doing much. Like, Ohtani doesn't need to really be healthy and amazing. They're going to pay this all off over the next 10 years easily. I think realistically, it was a great signing. And
what did you guys think of the secrecy around the negotiations and everything, and kind of how that played out? Buster Olney had a ridiculous hot take article that I thought was completely self-serving, like just absolutely chastising Ohtani for, being secret and basically not being the limelight superstar that everybody wants him to be. And as somebody who grew up a Barry Sanders fan, it reminded me very much of Barry, as well as just like typical Japanese culture and attitude. And I kind of liked the secrecy of everything and literally having no clue and just only hearing rumor mill stuff. I thought it was fun, but I'd be curious what you guys thought of that.
Yeah, I love Buster Olney. I love almost everything Buster Olney has ever written. But that article, that one bummed me out. It was one of the few times I was just like, I don't know what he's talking about.
That's exactly.
We're Braves fans, so we don't get any rumors about what's happening either. We just all of a sudden our phone dings and the Braves have done something that there was no mention of anywhere ever. So I'm fine with it. Like, it's his free agency. He can do it however he wants to do it. I mean, he was the one. Ohtani's actually the one that broke the news. Like, it was his Instagram post telling everyone where he wanted to sign or where he was signing, and that's how he wanted to do it. So, I mean, that's totally fine with me. He can do what he wants.
That's what I thought.
I'm a Rockies fan, so we also don't have any rumors, but for a different reason. We don't do anything. But the media, it just shows their true colors, man. This guy can live his life how he wants, and you can respect it, but they are upset that they can't report on it. It's like, it's okay. And we saw them report false information because they're so desperate to report something, and they made themselves look like fools. So it's
very
funny to see.
They want him to have like a big party like LeBron James and, announce where he's taking his talents. And I just love that that's not who Ohtani is. I think he's exactly the superstar we all need, not the opposite. One other question around Ohtani that I have is, so realistically, like what are you guys projecting for him next year? And is there any chance this injury impacts his hitting at all? What do you expect from him? And just purely looking at his WAR numbers, he was at 6 last year. So where's he going to stack up in the MVP race at least for the next year?
I don't want to I don't want to sit here pumping Ohtani. That sounds terrible. But will we see better production when he's surrounded by a team that's competing, when these games matter? Like, is he going to be more motivated? Is it possible that he was just swinging for the fences sometimes in Anaheim, knowing that, the games didn't matter and his team was garbage? Like, I don't know. I don't think we've seen the best that Ohtani can be. I'm guessing we are going to see it. And I'm really disappointed. I wanted him to go to Toronto. I didn't realize how much I wanted him to go to Toronto until he didn't. because it's just so much harder for Acuna to win MVPs now with him in the league, especially after 2024.
AL's wide open. AL's wide open for MVP. It's between Judge and Soto, it feels like.
NL's loaded.
So I will say, in regards to hitting, there's a chance this absolutely impacts him. We saw Bryce Harper be a slow start with his elbow. We saw Ohtani when he had his first Tommy John. He had his two worst years offensively. He had a 121 OPS in 2019 when he didn't pitch, and he pitched 2 games in 2020 and is 79 OPS plus. So he was actually below league average. There's absolutely a chance that it hurts him. Do I think it will? No. That could have been a product of trying to figure out pitching more than anything else, but there's a chance for sure. And if he does not hit well, we're going to hear so much crap from other fans about the contract. But they did the same thing in 2018 and 19 about the Angels, and then he won 2 MVPs in the next 3 years. So I think he'll be fine in the long run, but this next year he might not be Ohtani.
I just wonder how that's going to impact card prices. You know, baseball of all the sports to me seems the most. Every sport's impacted by hype and short-term value. All of them are. But like baseball fans are a little more astute, a little more stat focused. They sort of understand when a player is playing well and when they're not. And I just wonder if he doesn't play up to snuff, like as well or better than he has the last 3 seasons, you know, what's that going to look like for his overall image and reputation and that hype around him, and how much will the media be desperately trying to prop him up if he's not, you know, putting up the same kind of numbers? Like I'd be kind of, I don't know. Ever since the injury, I've been real skittish on Ohtani. I want to believe in him long-term for sure. I really like him as a player, as much as anybody at this point in baseball, honestly. But I get that like pit in my stomach between the huge contract and just the injury and everything else. I'm like, I want this guy to succeed so badly. I'm afraid he won't.
I think that is a true concern, Ty. I actually feel the same way. This contract, I think, could get ugly simply because it's so big, but I think he'll be fine because I think the Dodgers will make enough money off of other types of advertising or, you know, attendance or whatever they're going to do. They'll be fine financially, but this contract could look bad in 5 years when he's a below average or average hitter and then he can't pitch. I don't think that'll be the case, but going to a different team has a bigger impact on your cards than people realize. I don't think it's usually a good thing, especially if you don't perform your first year. It can be a huge hit to people's cards. So my thoughts are, if he does have a bad year and he does drop 20-30%, it probably is the time to buy, because Ohtani seems to always bounce back. That's my thought. That might be the only time to buy Ohtani in the next 3 to 4 years, is this next year if he starts out slow.
Yeah, if he has a bad April, you're going to see a lot of people saying worst contract in sports history. And if people start dumping, that would be the absolute perfect time to sneak in there and grab some cards.
When he comes back healthy in 2025, that's crazy to say, he's going to be a monster for the Dodgers. I really think that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a couple other players. So we talked about Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. Do we think this is good for their card values, bad for their card values? Are they going to cannibalize each other, or do you think they'll all be completely fine, independent of each other? Chris?
I do not think they will cannibalize each other at all. I think they're just going to prop each other up. Like, the more hype on the Dodgers, the better it is for Mookie and Freeman and Ohtani all together. Like, the media is going to be all over that team all the time. They're going to be on ESPN like twice a month. And it can only help. And it's not like Mookie and Freeman are slowing down.
Yeah. And the hard part is they're a hard team to hate. Usually you can hate certain teams, but like Mookie, Freeman, and Ohtani are all good people. So that makes it difficult. What's your thoughts, Ty?
I agree with that for sure. I mean, I think that Dodgers team is going to have so much attention. You might want to be buying Brewster Gratterall at this point. Like, everybody's going to be focused on. I'm joking about that, but yeah, I don't think it's going to cannibalize at all. I think if anything, it really does. It's going to put even more of a spotlight on the Dodgers. I think they're going to be rolling. You know, they've got the talent. They've got the talent to, you know, chase the single season winning record. You know, obviously their pitching's got to stack up. They got to be healthy. They had the issue with Urias, you know, and the off the field stuff. But like, if they can have decent pitching, their hitting is going to be completely fine, better than fine. It's probably going to be, you know, top 3 in baseball. So I don't think it does anything to hurt those other guys. it's just going to be really interesting to see the MVP race. What if we end up? I mean, theoretically, I don't think this happens if Acuna is healthy, but how crazy would it be if you ended up with 3 MVP finalists being on the same team? Because you had 2 of them this year.
Yeah.
So
2 of the top 3. So yeah. Do you think this hurts Ohtani's popularity? Do you think people are going to hold this against Ohtani? I'm seeing a lot of people saying his contract is ruining baseball and that he screwed over the Angels, or do you think it'll be all blown over in the next 6 months?
I agree. His contract is kind of part of what's ruining baseball, like the lack of financial field levelness. Jeez. There's a better way to say that. Someone else just come up with the phrase. I mean, that's terrible for baseball. But that's not Ohtani's fault. Like, he's an incredible player.
But why is it terrible for baseball?
Because we're getting to the point where I think I've talked about this before. Like, baseball will, if we don't get a salary cap going, baseball will split into 2, and we'll have the Premier League and the Champions League. Because right now it's absurd to expect a team like the Pirates or the Brewers or the A's or the Marlins to compete with a team like the Dodgers or the 2 New York teams or even the Boston team or the San Francisco Giants. Like, the market sizes are so drastically different. The individual cable deals that each team has are so absurdly different. The Dodgers are making like $250,000 a year from Time Warner Cable, which I think is now Spectrum. The Braves are making it's something like $12 million a year from their local deal that was signed before the team was sold. So like it's without a limit on what teams can spend, it's already becoming near impossible for smaller market teams to compete.
So I want to disagree with you real quick. And I want to see if you disagree with my disagreement. But this last World Series, who did we see in the World Series? The Diamondbacks. Baseball's a crapshoot. If you can make the playoffs, you can get to the World Series. You don't have to have the best roster. And on top of that, I do want to point out there is basically a tax. There already is a cap in baseball. I know the luxury tax, no one goes over it for more than 2 or 3 years because the implications are insane. The Dodgers aren't going over the luxury tax. They did this contract because of it. My guess is they might put limitations on the next CBA to restrict what just happened. But the truth is, I don't think that it's ruining baseball. I think it's great for baseball. Personally, this is going to be the most baseball spoken about in 20 years by far. And so it's one of those things that baseball games, like you mentioned, are going to be on ESPN. They want to pick up Ohtani and Trout and Betts and Freeman, maybe Trout. But I think that the way that it's set up, maybe a salary floor is what needed more than a salary cap to convince these multi-billionaire owners to spend more than $40 million
seems
on
like
a lineup. Yeah, it does. So I guess my thing is there already is kind of a cap. Even Steve Cohen, he didn't go over that cap for more than a year, right? Maybe 2 years, but he's backing off of spending and rebuilding because it's just not worth it. So do you disagree with me? Like, I think that people are really upset, but like deferred money's been happening. Look at Bobby Bonilla. Look at Ichiro's getting paid $5 million a year. He's one of the highest paid players on the Mariners right now. In the Reds, Ken Griffey Jr. is one of the highest paid players in the Reds right now. And so it's not like this is new. The way it was set up was Ohtani's idea, but maybe I'm just about good for these players and good for organizations trying. We don't want to disincentivize. What am I looking for, Ty? Not incentivize. Disincentivize, thank you. Spending and trying, and that caps do that. That's what caps do. They might make it more even playing field, but hey, if they want to go all in and make a dynasty, let them try.
Yeah, I'm on board with the floor. I like the salary floor idea. Like a lot of these teams are just taking revenue sharing money and putting it in the owner's pocket and walking
that's
away
the
with
issue.
it, which is a bunch of crap. They should not be allowed to do that. But I know, and random teams can get hot and make the playoffs occasionally, but like the Dodgers have the ability to sustain this run. Like the Yankees had the ability to sustain a run, and they can just plug their holes with money. Like the Brewers can't do this. The Brewers can make the playoffs and do okay, but once the arbitration years start chipping away, they have to tear it down and start it up again.
Yeah, that's fair. But I will say in the World Series, you had the Diamondbacks this year who had 80-something wins. Even the 2021 Braves who won the World Series, they weren't necessarily a juggernaut. Like they had 80-something wins. 2019
they did over $200 million on their roster.
Yeah, that's fair. But the 2019 Nationals, they also spent money on pitching. They had Juan Soto, who was cheap, but they only had 80-something wins. So it's not like a prerequisite in baseball to have a big – I'm starting to sound like a cheap owner. But I guess I am all in favor of letting these players sign big contracts and letting teams try. I think it's great that the Rangers went out and did spend money and won.
Yeah.
I think it's also great the Diamondbacks home grew almost everything and made the World Series and almost won. So
there's a lot of sports parody. I saw Chris, you making a little soccer reference there. It seemed like so. Yeah, soccer. The Premier League is really unique because even within the Premier League, it's really only like 6 teams that compete every year. There was like one anomaly when Leicester City, like, is just a trash bag team, and they're in the secondary league right now. They managed to win, and that was like a crazy Cinderella story. But to Scott's point, in baseball, and in a lot of sports now, in a lot of American sports, like parity just seems to like be increasing across all the different sports. Parity seems to be increasing. I think baseball, teams can kind of come out of nowhere if they draft well and they develop well and they have people come up. I mean, Tampa Bay is a perfect example of that. As well as, many years Minnesota, wasn't paying anybody and they were just developing talent and, competing. Whether or not they can win championships, maybe that's a different story. But like Scott said, we saw Arizona this year, and maybe if some of those lower rung teams actually do realize success, then they'll start actually, opening up their checkbooks and saying like, okay, let's commit to this and pay some people. But
my other beef, you mentioned Boston being a big market. Boston's one of the cheapest teams right now. They're not willing to spend. And so I think we should incentivize spending because it's good product for fans overall. Ohtani's contract is so unique. We always talk about he's a unicorn. People are paying way too much. But like we look at the top revenue, like the top actual payrolls, the Rockies are 14th, Giants are 13th, Angels are 12th, Blue Jays are 11th, Red Sox are 10th. But if we go to the top, it's tough. I see your point, Chris. And maybe I'm being more passionate than I should be, but it's not ruining baseball that the Dodgers are signing Ohtani. It's ruining baseball that owners are cheap to me.
Yeah. I think it's both of those things. Yeah, there are just super cheap owners that only care about making money, and then there's owners that will really push the envelope and spending. I mean, parity in baseball is sort of the way that with 12 teams in the postseason, what I would consider sort of lack of parity can get disguised by a hot team like Arizona blasting through a bunch of big payrolls to get to the World Series. But we know going into the season that like the Dodgers are going to make the playoffs. Like we absolutely know that they're going to win their division. They're going to make the playoffs. And that's pretty much a given every year for the last like 9 years. Like unless something terrible happens in the offseason, they're going to be there. The Yankees will compete. They may not make the playoffs like they didn't this year, but they'll be in the conversation. The Mets, it took an utter disaster for the $300 million Mets to not make the playoffs.
And the Padres, it happened to 2 or 3. The Yankees, like 3 of the biggest payrolls actually didn't make it.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
But they were there until the very end, except for the Mets.
That's good. That's good, right? That's good they were in it. And then I don't know. So we'll see what happens. I think there's going to be a lot of talk and negotiations between owners because this is bad for the other owners because it's not the full $70 million is not hitting the competitive balance tax. So those lower teams aren't making as much money off of this as they want. And so owners are going to be pissed. Players probably are all for it because it still means a larger contract. But the AAV dropping to $2 million, actually viewed as $46 million, which is still pretty dang high. It'll be interesting. But I love baseball. Can I just say that? I freaking love baseball. It's so much better than other sports because of like the fact that in the last 5 World Series, there's been 80-win teams. It's just such a great sport. So
I'm excited just to see what the numbers look like at the end of the year. I want to see the counting stats that Ohtani, Freeman, and Betts can put up. Hitting 1, 2, 3. Like Acuna scored 149 runs last year. No reason Mookie can't get to at least like 130 hitting in front of those two guys.
You got to 149?
Yeah.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Holy Hannah.
And I really want to know I don't know what the record is for catcher RBIs in a season, but I'm guessing Will Smith will have a shot. Will have the opportunity to come close to that record.
Totally. He'll have 3 guys with almost a 400 on base percentage ahead of him. He should be able to.
Yeah. And everybody is just going to walk their way to him, I would think.
Yeah. I hope they get Trout still somehow. I don't know if I know Perry Manassian said that they won't. That's the Angels GM. But it'd be really fun as a baseball fan to watch that lineup. So, all right. Well, I think that's everything we want to discuss. Sorry, I leaned a little bit more baseball heavy than baseball card. this specific episode. Stay tuned for our next episode. It's going to be very baseball card heavy. It's with this same group, and we're talking about images, which I know a lot of collectors love for Stadium Club and short prints and things along those lines. If you aren't already a subscriber, please subscribe to the YouTube channel if you like this conversation. If you don't like this conversation, then don't worry about it. If you're on Spotify, please leave us a 5-star review if you like it. If not, then don't worry about it. Other than that, we will talk to you all on Monday.